Live on a sunny and very nice Thursday morning, not Tuesday, Thursday, July the 10th. Dustin not feeling well today, so he won't be with me in his traditional spot on Thursday. But you got me for the foreseeable future here. And even though we are in the middle of July, traditionally the deadest time of the sports calendar, I still have plenty to talk about today. And that will include answering your questions. If you have a question for me on anything, it doesn't have to be it can be about the Browns or the Guardians or the Cavs, but it can be about anything else. Just jump in the YouTube chat right now. And if you do so, you can ask whatever the hell you want. Dustin and I used to do a segment on the Bull and Fox show called Ask the Show, where we encouraged people to, in fact, we didn't take questions about sports at all. If you wanted to ask a question, it had to be about something besides sports. So I will take sports-related questions, but I will also take questions on pretty much anything else. So whatever you got, any questions you may have, jump in the chat right now, and we will get to it. I'll also get to the Guardians, who stunningly had a 3-game sweep of the Astros that concluded last night following a 10-game winning streak. So we'll get to that in a little bit. And we'll get to the Browns in just a second. First, if you're not using the BetRivers app, folks, you're missing out. The BetRivers app is there for all your sports gambling needs, from baseball to basketball to football, soccer, and more. Tennis. Dustin does a tennis show on the channel. If you like betting on tennis, there's always something going on, right? And I'll be on the Betting Weekly Hardball show, which is live every weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Today it'll be me and Wes Reynolds, and we'll break down the games, including a couple games that will be in progress by the time we join you at 2 p.m. Betting Weekly. Fast break every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern, so we've got you covered. Make sure you're checking out the BetRivers app. This morning, I was combing through the internet, and I saw a column on ESPN, and the headline was grading 2025 NFL offseason grades, draft trades, more moves by team. It was written by Seth Walder. Seth's a good writer for ESPN, and he's an analytics-based writer, so we keep that in mind. And if you look at the grades for the offseason, I bring up the Browns, and he gave the Browns a B+. Now, before I get into, the context of a B+ in general, a B+ is obviously a good grade. How many teams did he give a better grade than B+? Not many. This is just one man's opinion, but only 4. Now, there's a number of teams that got a B+, but only 4 teams got a grade better than a B+. So, again, according to Seth Walder, the Browns are tied for the 5th best offseason in his opinion. He gave the Rams an A. He gave the 49ers an A-. He gave the Cardinals an A-, and he gave the Broncos an A-. Other teams that got a B+ along with the Browns, the Ravens, the Titans, the Bills, the Eagles, the Buccaneers, the Texans, and that's it. So the Browns, what was that, about a 7-way tie for fourth place, I think it was, or 5th place. So he was high on the Browns. Just to give you the rest of it, the Jets got a B, as did the Raiders, the Colts, the Giants, the Chargers. Bears got a B-. Same for the Lions, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Chiefs. The Packers got a C+. So did the Patriots, the Vikings, and the Bengals. Commanders got a C. So did the Jaguars. He obviously, I think you could tell based on the grades that he liked the trade the Browns made for the Browns more than the Jags. We'll get into that. Steelers also got a C for the offseason. So did Dallas. Falcons got a C-. The Saints got a D. So nobody got an F. So let's go back to the Browns and his thoughts, and then I'll tell you my thoughts on his thoughts. I thought it was an interesting read either way. Biggest move, trading down from 2 to 5 in the draft. Move I liked. Again, this was Seth Walder's opinion. Trading down in the draft. Move I disliked. Signing edge Myles Garrett to an extension, which is an interesting one. He goes on to talk about the fact that he likes to trade because it gives the Browns a lot of extra ammunition to get the franchise back on track with the additional first-round pick next year, an additional shot to potentially get the quarterback of the future. He does also point out that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders give them multiple chances at hitting a lottery ticket. That's what he calls it. He also liked the Browns signing 2 offensive linemen on the cheap, Tevin Jenkins and Cornelius Lucas, who will be probably their 2 of their top backups. He also liked the signing of Malik Collins, who the Browns signed to play next to Mason Graham for 2 years and $20 million. He obviously said he doesn't like the Garrett extension. We'll get into that in a minute. The only other thing he said he didn't like was he said the Pickett trade was a head scratcher, but the Browns didn't know they were going to draft 2 quarterbacks at the time. But they still gave up more for him than the Eagles did a year ago, even though Pickett didn't show anything to improve his value during the 2024 season. So a minor criticism there. And I want to start with the Myles Garrett side of this. He said, not every move fit. He talked about the fact that everything the Browns did, or most of what the Browns did this offseason, was about rebuilding, which is obvious. He said, but not every move fit into the rebuilding thesis, most notably the Garrett extension. I criticized the move at the time and feel the same now. This was a missed opportunity for Cleveland to turn Garrett, a Browns legend, but also heading into the latter half of his career, into future assets. Instead, they handed Garrett a huge contract, burning his value in 2025 and perhaps beyond when the Browns aren't contenders. The Browns are not in a good cap position and could have used the financial savings too. Now, at the time of the Garrett extension, well, let's say this. Before the Garrett extension, I was on board with trading him. Now, it's not as simple as Seth Walder makes it seem here. Myles Garrett, if the Browns had traded him, there would have been a massive dead cap hit that, and I've said many times, like, the cap can be a myth at times. There's always ways to work around it, or usually. In this case, it would have been very tough. The dead cap hit they would have taken from the Myles Garrett contract had they traded him would have been tricky and maybe nearly impossible to deal with. So in theory, yes, based on the state of the franchise currently, it probably, if you could have done it, it would have made more sense to trade Myles Garrett then and get what would have been, in theory, a ton of assets than signing him. However, I think now that it's done, and you could say rebuild all you want. These things can happen in a hurry, and I know it sounds crazy, and I'm not very optimistic about the Browns this year. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think they're going to win 5-6 games this season. And it's clear well, I shouldn't say it's clear. At this point, they haven't solved their quarterback problem. Could Shedeur Sanders, could Dillon Gabriel be the answer? Sure. But the percentage chances of that can't be all that high at this point, right? So we will see. Could they solve that next year? Let's say they don't solve it until next year, and they solve it with a rookie next year. You could turn it around in a hurry, and Myles Garrett, in 2-3 years, there's no reason he still can't be one of the best pass rushers in football. And not to mention, there didn't seem, I think people thought the Browns would be able to get like a record-breaking haul. Let's say they did get 2 first-round picks, which I'm not 100% sure they would have for an defensive lineman, no matter how good he is. But even if they had, it's going to be from a team that's really good, and thus they would have been late first-round picks. So as opposed to the trade potentially with Jacksonville where you traded down. Now, so in the end, I don't think the Myles Garrett extension was a bad move. I disagree with Seth Walder there. I understand where he's coming from. And had the Browns been able to trade him and had gotten a lot of assets in return, I would have understood that and it could have potentially led to, them being able to. Those picks were not likely to help them get a quarterback. Is my thought in the Myles Garrett trade, but could it have helped them get some other players that were a lot by the time this happens, by the time the Browns are good again, that would have maybe helped the team more than Myles Garrett at that point? It's possible, but even 3 years from now, you got to believe Myles Garrett is still going to be better than most players you're going to get at the back end of the first round, if not all. This guy is a freak of nature. Everybody, time catches up with everybody, and it will catch up with Myles Garrett eventually. But I would, if I had to bet, I'd still bet he's playing at an extremely high level in 3 seasons. Now, we shall see. In the long run, if the Browns are able to turn it around while Myles Garrett's still a great player, then it will have been worth it for them to keep him. If they can't, then it was a mistake. But that we won't know for a while. And if your mistake is signing one of the best players in the history of the franchise to an extension, then that's a good extent. With all the mistakes the Browns have made, that's a good one to make. I will say, though, that giving him a no-trade clause, I think, was a huge mistake. Myles Garrett had no leverage to demand that. I think that was a really, really big mistake. All right, I'm looking at the chat now. I see some people throwing in questions there. Keep them coming. I'm going to read the chat messages and questions in a few minutes when I finish up with the Browns here. But keep the questions coming. They can be about sports. I'd prefer non-sports questions, something, whatever, about the business and anything, movies, TV, food. I love talking about those things. So keep the questions coming, and I'll get to all the YouTube questions and messages coming up shortly. So I disagree with him there. Now, I also disagree with him on the trade down. I didn't like the trade down. We've talked about this time and time again. I wanted them to take Travis Hunter because I think he's going to be a superstar in the league. They did what they – again, I understand what the Browns did here. I understand trading down to 5 in the draft to get that first-round pick next year from Jacksonville, which, unlike a team you would trade Myles Garrett for, Jacksonville could end up being a bad team. Now, with Trevor Lawrence has at times shown he could be a good quarterback. Again, there's been more bad than good with him. But I'm not going to be totally stunned if in a bad AFC South, Jacksonville has a decent season and Travis Hunter has a great year and maybe that pick ends up not being as high as we think it is. I also wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville wins 5 games and that pick's in the top 5. So that's certainly a possibility. The Tevin Jenkins and Cornelius Lucas signings are fine. I'm with him on that. Malik Collins, perfectly fine. So, listen, until we see – it's hard to grade an offseason when you're including the draft without knowing if the players you drafted are any good. But based on how he talks about – I got no problem with the B+. I think that's pretty accurate. I take off some points for the trade down that he gave, but I also give some points for the Myles Garrett extension that he didn't. And just the Browns making it very clear that they're done with Deshaun Watson by adding 4 quarterbacks in the offseason, to me, was the right move and sent the right message. So I'm totally on board with that. All right, I'm going to get to the Guardians in just a few minutes, who I give them credit. They played a great series when they looked like they were completely lost. But first, I want to get to your questions here. Let's see. Z says, what will it take for you to cover hockey? Do the Blue Jackets got to win the cup? Nobody wants to hear me talk about hockey, Z. I don't know anything about hockey. I respect the sport. I respect the players that play the sport. I actually like going to hockey games in person. It's a fun sport to be in the arena for. But I would be doing a disservice to my listeners if I talked about hockey because I don't know enough about it to talk about it in an educated way. And I don't want to shortchange my great fans who, turn to me for sports that I actually, at least sometimes, know what the hell I'm talking about. Kyle Andrews says, given your relative close proximity, have you considered switching your allegiances to the Blue Jays? No. Why would I do that? I know, but I am going to Toronto in August to see the Cubs play the Blue Jays in Toronto. It'll be my second trip to that stadium. But, no, I would not switch my allegiances. Sam Hill with the Bull and Fox emojis. Thank you, Sam. Dustin a little under the weather. He'll be back with me next week. Oliver Von Sweet says, let me guess, they got a B+ for trading up for Shador. No, Shador was barely mentioned in there. Ben says Steelers are trash. Jim says B+ because they got Sanders in round 5. No, I mean, he mentioned Sanders as a lottery ticket, but didn't really make much of that being the reason why they were a B+. Patrick says, Bull, if you could host a podcast with one Cleveland athlete, past or present, who would it be? I'll throw in the caveat, even though you asked that. I'll take out people that I've worked with already, right? So not including Dustin, Tyvis. I'll take out Brad Sellers because Brad and I work together. One Cleveland athlete, past or present. So besides those guys, I'm assuming it's a player who played in Cleveland, not a player necessarily from Cleveland. So I'm going to go with that. A player that played in Cleveland. I was going to say LeBron, but I just feel like that's a cop-out answer. But it would be fascinating to do a podcast with LeBron. Obviously, that would never happen, but that would be the first choice. I'm not gonna say Bernie either because I've worked with Bernie a lot. I want to pick guys that I've never done anything with. So yeah, LeBron would be a good one. I think Kyrie would be fascinating. I love Kyrie the player. Kyrie has said some things off the court that have pissed me off, but I would love to get a chance to talk with him and hash that all out. Have a real conversation with him. I'll tell you, I think it would be fun to do with Odell Beckham. I know a lot of people would roll their eyes at that. I would think it would be fun to do with Baker Mayfield, as much as I've crapped on him and probably hates my guts if he knows who I am. But it would still be fun to do with Baker. From a baseball standpoint, thinking of the 90s Indians, but some of those guys, are either maybe a little boring personality-wise or, I just don't know. Would Albert Bell be good in a podcast? I mean, I guess he might. I don't know. Wow. I really want to think about that when it comes to the Indians / Guardians. Jason Kipnis would probably be fun. Stephen Kwan would be a lot of fun. I would say Albert Bell, and the more I think about it. That would be a good one. Mitchell Schwartz would be a good one for football. So those are some of the players there that I would like to do a podcast with. I'm guessing none of those will ever happen. Z says, I bought the new college football game last night. Who should I lead to a national title? I think you got to take, like, the worst team, Z. Like, take one of the bottom-of-the-barrel MAC teams or something. Jeffrey says, I have a heart attack. What? I have a heart attack? I would rather have Jameis Winston right now than Joe Flacco. If Jameis was running Kevin's actual offense, he could have done what Joe Flacco did. I don't understand that. Okay. I disagree, but that's fine. Wasted time, Chief. Myles Garrett is not winning any games. Z, Bull, are you watching Love Island? I mean, Z, I think you know me well enough to know I am not watching Love Island. Are you watching Love Island? That is the question. And if so, can I get you some mental help? Can we get you a therapist? Sam, any big plans for the podcast or UCSS or new projects in the future that you can share? Um, Nothing set in stone, Sam. I appreciate it. Obviously, I'm plenty busy between UCSS, especially in the football season, and the Bullpen podcast. Um, I do, Dustin and I may expand to a second day in the future. I have an idea for something else I want to do with an additional podcast with Bet Rivers that I'm talking about, but I don't want to put it out there yet. We'll see because I'm not sure if it's gonna happen or not. But I appreciate the question. Let's see. Oliver says, my 16-year-old daughter just got a job at Giannino's. Would you like to weigh in on their pizza? I've never had Giannino's, so I can't weigh in. I would not give an opinion on a place I haven't been to. I'm not a big chain person. I think that's a chain, right? So generally, I don't like chain pizza, but people do. Jim says, Bull, how's Sabalenka's serve look today? I mean, you got to ask Dustin that question. I don't know anything about that. Patrick, what advice would you give a high school or college student who wants to work in sports broadcasting, podcasting, or writing? Well, so, I mean, it's a long conversation, and I've talked to many students, especially college students, over the years, and my advice has changed over the years. My first paycheck as a broadcaster was in the winter of 96, 97. But I consider the start of my professional career to be the summer of 99 when I was doing play-by-play. And then my first full-time gig was in 2001. But I guess that doesn't matter. Technically, I don't have a full-time gig now, based on traditional standards. But obviously, whether I go back to 96 or 99 or 2001, the business, for anybody that's in this business, whether it's podcasting, which didn't really exist, of course, back in those days, radio, TV, whatever, I mean, it's all changed dramatically. My advice would be outwork everybody. Make yourself as valuable and flexible as possible. And what I mean by that is have the ability to do other things. When I was in college, I made sure to learn. My college had a good radio station. In fact, I'm going to visit my college next month for the first time in, I think, over 20 years. But it'd be interesting to see what the radio station looks like these days. But my college radio station allowed me the opportunity to do things that I wasn't really interested in. I got a chance to do news reports. I got a chance to be a DJ, create a music schedule, to train the younger students, the freshmen. And it was a good experience. It actually helped me get my foot in the door for my first full-time job in 2001. I got my first full-time job in radio with a radio station called WIBX in Utica, New York. And they hired me not as a sports guy, but as a news reporter. And I didn't want to be a news reporter, but I needed a full-time job. I was just out of college. And so I had a friend that worked there, and I took the job. And then 6 months later, their one sports guy left for Syracuse, New York. And I got the opportunity, and the rest is history. So you got to make yourself as marketable as possible. Now, in this day and age, there's positives and negatives. The positive of the podcasting age is that you can get yourself out there more easily. The negative is there's so many podcasts out there that it's hard to make a dent. But I think it's a good opportunity if you want to be in sports talk, is to take an opportunity to do your own thing and then get it out to other people out there. But the negative, again, is when I was first coming up, there were opportunities for young broadcasters to work in small market radio stations. I remember, I think it was before I took the job in Utica. I can't even remember now. So sometime in the, around 2000, 2001, I went for a job interview at a very small radio station in a town in Oklahoma. I don't even remember the name of the town. I flew into Oklahoma City. I got sick on the flight. It was a whole mess. But it was a very fun experience. They took me to a high school football game. The tailgate for that was just insane, and nice guy and a nice radio station. And I ultimately decided not to take that job, but there were opportunities like that, and I got that in Utica, New York, which is a small town in upstate New York. I mean, it's a city, but not a big one. And those opportunities don't really exist in the business, so you got to make your own opportunity. But in terms of radio and TV, so few companies own so many stations. It's really not good for the business. I don't think it's good for the listener. And that's why I love working for Bet Rivers, because we are, we're not some, in terms of the media arm, we're not this massive conglomerate. And everybody knows everybody. It's kind of cool. But I'm happy to help it, Patrick. If you have somebody specific, have them reach out to me. Rob says, going to London and watch the Browns lose. Have you ever been, and do you have any restaurant recommendations? And sadly, I have not. I mean, I have unfortunately not had, I have not been to Europe. Let's just say that. I'd like to go. I think I will go probably to Italy first in the next couple of years. But at this point, I have not been to Europe. But have a great time. Try not to let the Browns spoil it for you. Patrick says, Arturo's in North Olmsted across from the DMV. Best pizza on the west side. Never heard of it. I'll have to check it out. Eric says, hockey is by far the greatest game. Fair enough. If you love it, good. Aaron says, hello from Florida Bowl. Why the hell would they let Chubb go? I feel like that was about as dumb as bringing in Watson. It felt like he was washed up at this point, and I think, looking at it now, I think Nick Chubb wanted to go. Aaron says, when does the Cleveland curse end? Didn't it end when the Cavs won the championship? Eric says, Chuck Booms is a janitor now. Goes by Chuck Brooms. If you know, you know. Why did Chuck Booms get fired? I mean, I'm not going to go into the details. I think you could figure out why Chuck Booms got fired. He was his own worst enemy. But I'm not going to air all the dirty laundry. I can't do that. Ben, what age did you move to Cleveland? So I moved to Cleveland in 2011. I had just turned 40. A month, because we had just had my wife had a 40th birthday party for me in New Jersey right before we moved, like a month before. Christopher says, Bull, what do you think happens to Luis Ortiz? Well, and that will lead me into talking about the Guardians here for a minute. If Major League Baseball concludes that Luis Ortiz, if you don't know, Luis Ortiz has been suspended. There has been video of 2 pitches that raised red flags for the gambling community, that they believe he purposely threw balls for bettors to win because you could bet on the first pitch. And if they can prove that he did that on purpose, he's going to be banned for life. His career's over. That's it, 100%. I don't know what's going to happen for sure, but I think there's a decent chance that Luis Ortiz has pitched his last game in Major League Baseball, which is a shame. Because unlike hitting, we know what the Guardians are able to do with pitching. Although lately the Guardians have hit, right? All of a sudden the last 3 games, they've scored a ton of runs. They scored 10 on Tuesday. Another 4 yesterday. That was enough. They win 4-2. They sweep the Astros. I mean, who could have seen that coming? I know it's baseball and you never know. But after they'd lost 10 straight playing absolutely miserable baseball, they play the hottest team in the league, the Astros, or one of them, and they sweep them. They beat Hunter Brown. They knock around Josh Hader. Just insane. Great series. Slade Ciccone pitched real well yesterday, and that's the frustrating part, is that they're just so darn good at developing pitching, right? Slade Ciccone, another high pick from the Diamondbacks like Trevor Bauer. You know, he hadn't gotten a ton of opportunity in the big leagues with Arizona, but when he did, he didn't pitch well. He goes out there again last night, 7 innings, 7 base runners, 2 runs. And they scored those 2 runs in the 8th after he left the game. He had shutout through 7. 9 strikeouts. He's been really good. The ERA down to 3.44. I mean, for a rookie, he's been tremendous. Jose's been big the last couple of days. Angel Martinez has been big the last couple of days. They both homered in the first inning. Jonathan Rodriguez actually got a big hit, knocking in 2 runs. And just a great series. Again, I can't change my mind based on 3 games. I don't believe in this team. It's going to take a lot more than a 3-game sweep over the Astros to change my core beliefs about this team now. But it was a great series, and I hope they have the opportunity. Well, they have the opportunity to prove me and others wrong. Let's hope they take advantage of it. I'd love to give a mea culpa in September when the Guardians are in the pennant race. I don't think it's going to happen, obviously, but I'd love to see it. But great series. Now they play the White Sox, who stink. So they could really have, who knows? Maybe they win 6 of 7. Maybe they win 7 in a row going into the All-Star break. I think that's entirely possible. A few more questions. Preston says, you should interview another big player like you did with Joe Flacco. Always working on that. We shall see. Stay tuned. Jim, what's your favorite pizza topping? Sausage. Easy. Victor, what is your favorite cheat food right now, Bull? Listen, to be honest, I'm doing a lot of cheat fooding, but that's got to stop. I'm going to be having bariatric surgery after the new year, so I before I do that, I got to lose 30, 40 pounds. So, but my favorite cheat food is Genoa salami. There it is. I love Genoa salami. It's so bad for you. It tears up my stomach, but it's terrible. Z, how do we get you to try pineapple on pizza? I've tried it. It's gross. I don't like it. I love pineapple and I love pizza. I don't want them together. Eddie, do you think a work stoppage will help the Guardians? I mean, it depends on the result of that work stoppage. If there truly is a work stoppage and they get a cap, yes, that will certainly help the Guardians in the long run. Situfu, Bull, did you watch Game of Thrones? Yes, of course. Like everybody else, I didn't love the ending. I thought they rushed the last season. Overall, it was a great show. Sal, top 5 pizza places in Cleveland. It's funny. It's not Cleveland. It's and I haven't been there yet, but I got to check out this place. Hold on. I think it's in Akron. I don't want to say the name wrong. Pizzeria DeLoro. I got to check this place out. It's funny because somebody else talked to me about it, and I'm going to check this place out in the next couple of weeks. I've heard really good things about this place. I'm going actually next Friday. My favorite pizzerias, and again, I haven't been to every place, but of the places I've been, my favorites are, in no particular order, Sweet Basil in Westlake, and Forno out in Avon, Murata's in, what is that, in Cleveland Heights or Shaker Heights? I can't remember exactly where that is. El Rione down, in, is it technically in Tremont? I can't remember. And then 5. What's another place that I like? Oh, shoot. There's the place on Lorraine Road. Pizza. Oh, God. I can't think of the name. I got to look it up. I want to give them their due. Oh, Sauced Wood-Fired Pizza on Lorraine in Fairview. I would say those are my top 5 places right now. But I'm open. If you know a place, let me know. Let's see. What do we got? Evan 419 might be more for reporters, but in your role, do you guys ever hear whispers of stories like Luis Ortiz or other big news before it's made public? Yeah, once in a while. Jason's certainly somebody that gets a lot of whispers. You can't, if somebody you talk to gives you information, they say you can't share it. You don't. I didn't hear anything about Luis Ortiz. I know that Zach Meisel had some info maybe an hour before it came out. I did have info on Terry Francona coming to the Indians at the time, years ago. I reported it, said he was going to be. Everybody laughed, and then I didn't get credit when it officially happened, but I'm not bitter about that. I got some info on I've gotten some things here and there. I had some stuff on Johnny Manziel. And I eventually shared it. once some of it became public. But not that often for me personally. Waste of time, says Jimmy Haslam. Interview Jimmy Haslam. I'd love to. He wouldn't do it. Eric says hello from Spain. Hello, Eric. Sam Hill, they need to institute a salary floor. Absolutely. If you're going to have a salary cap in baseball, which will take it a long lockout for that to happen, you absolutely have to have a salary floor as well. Jim, is Panini's closed? I don't know. There's more than one Panini's. Matthew, why do the Guardians not have a radio station affiliate in Columbus? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Eric says, Pizza DeLoro is great. Owner is a friend of mine. Great za. Oh, it's not in Akron. I don't know why I said it's in Akron. It's in, let me correct that. It's in Chagrin Falls. I don't know why I was saying Akron. I was thinking of another place that Dustin told me about, which I have to try too. But I'm looking forward to trying Pizza DeLoro. But again, it's in Chagrin Falls, not in Akron. So I just wanted to correct that. Oliver says Jason Lloyd is dead inside. He should be a redhead. Why a redhead's dead inside? I don't think that's fair. Patrick says Arturo's. I don't know that place. Sam says, I just heard all the Melt Bar and Grill locations are closed. Yeah, it sucks. You know, I guess they expanded to. It seemed like the one in Lakewood that I went to most of the time, because that's the one closest to, or was the one closest to me, and the signage is still up. That place was always packed. I don't know what happened. You know, obviously the COVID lockdowns hurt businesses, unfortunately, and it is what it is. All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you all. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the comments. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. I'm guessing most of you in here right now have. But if you haven't, or you know somebody who hasn't, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks to Z. Thanks to Max for producing today. I'll be on UCSS in about 90 minutes, and I'll be on Betting Weekly Hardball back here with Bet Rivers at 2 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.